Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV. We are very excited to announce that we also have our own radio platform, so you can watch or listen 24 hours a day. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is The Business Talk Show. Normally joining me for this show, I think this would have been our 87th episode together, Mr. Al CINI, my dear friend. He has the day off, so I will be joined by our guest. We are going to be discussing a subject that we have not yet explored yet on this platform. If you're joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We have between 20 and 25 live shows every week. We invite you wherever you are in the world to go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com, and book your session to share your story. Today, we're going to be talking all about clinical trials. We're going to be talking about some myths surrounding them, what the process is like to get involved with one, and what you can do so that you know that you're not alone. Joining me is someone whom I was introduced to by a dear person at the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. Her name is Dawn Halsey, and I've gotten very involved in the foundation since 2018. I've had ulcerative colitis since 1991, and I also have eczema and psoriasis. So I'm always interested to hear about what new advances are out there, what opportunities there are for patients. So let us welcome to the program today our special guest. Her name is Jennifer Bonfrisco, and we're going to talk about what it is that she does and the company she owns. Let's welcome her. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi, Dr. JACALYN.
It's so nice to see you. And I just was sharing with the audience a little bit of background about how we were introduced. But I'd love for you to share, how did you get involved or become aware of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, and where did that involvement take you?
So thank you for having me on, for one thing. I've been following your shows for a while, so I'm excited to be here. I got involved originally with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation because I was working for a smaller biotech company, a company that I adored, and we were developing a drug in IBD. So we were looking to develop this drug in either Crohn's or colitis. And as a tiny biotech company, we didn't have, endless resources that you see at these bigger organizations, right? So I knew that we needed to find the right patients, the right doctors, and we had to be very intentional about where we went. So a big aspect of that, I think many people know, they think about clinical trials, they think about Penn and Mayo Clinic and the big places. But what we're missing is the smaller community doctors and patients. So I knew that I needed to connect with patient advocacy groups, and any other networks that had these patients and knew they needed treatments. And I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which I think Dr. JACALYN wasn't too far from. But I met a wonderful woman named Dawn, who Dr. JACALYN and I share acquaintance of, and she headed up the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation in the Pennsylvania chapter. So that's how I got involved with it there, originally through Crohn's and Colitis. I have always been very passionate about doing trials in IBD. So I'd already had an interest in running trials there, but then I got introduced to Crohn's and Colitis and was thrilled by the work that they do there. They're not just an advocacy group, they really walk the talk about research. So that's kind of how we all met and got started.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Jennifer, I'd love for you, since we are a global platform, can you share with our audience what exactly is a clinical trial and why should we care?
It's a great question. I think Very interestingly, I think one of the things that's come out of COVID is people are more aware, right, about clinical trials. I think there's good and bad to that, right? Because suddenly clinical trials became a household name, which is good, right? But there's a lot of misconceptions about it too. Some people have maybe even more mistrust about it. People say, oh, COVID trials weren't real. I don't really know, but they've been around forever. We have a long history of trials, and they're very important. What I'd like people to know and think about, though, is that clinical trials are not only if you have a life-threatening disease, or they're not only a last resort. Uh, you know, People can participate in trials for all sorts of reasons. My son has acne, and he's on a clinical trial. So people can go on trials for even small things, for observational studies. So they're all different types of trials that are going on.
Thank you for explaining that. And if we want to be involved in a clinical trial, let's say to make money, I've seen
Mhm.
signs in recruitment ads, hey, you can make XYZ. Does everyone get accepted, or what does that process even look like?
Well, I think that can be that's a bit of a misconception too, because clinical trials are highly regulated, obviously, right? Well, they as they should be. So if we're going to pay a patient stipend, it has to be approved by the IRB, the Institutional Review Board. So that's pretty tightly controlled. You know, we can't be coercing patients to participate, right? So we can, as a pharma company, we can give a stipend, a reasonable stipend. We can usually pay for travel time or parking, but we can't do extraordinary things like that. And there's a reason for that, right? We want the right patients in it. The trials where people typically get paid are these healthy volunteer studies. So you see them; they're considered phase one studies or healthy volunteers. You typically see them like around colleges or where young people could stay inpatient, and those are healthy patients. It's the early part of the clinical development, and those guys typically get paid for the day or for the blood stick or whatever it is. Later on, when they're more in a disease state, typically you're not getting paid. You're going to get paid your inconvenience, your travel time, your parking, but not usually for your time, really.
That's great to know. I really want people to be able to take away what's true and what's not true as
Mm.
a result of this show today. Jennifer, so you were with a small firm, and did you just decide to leave and start your own company? What did that process look like?
Yeah, so and again, stop me if I go too long on this, but I love my story on here. Um, so I've been in clinical research for over 30 years. I got a degree in biology and wanted to go to veterinary school. That didn't happen. I found clinical and I loved it. Um, anyway, so I spent a long time in the big pharmas, the ones we all know, the Mercks, the Sanofis, the BMSs. And then probably about 12 years ago, I really found a love for the smaller companies. Really, in the smaller companies being like 30 people and lower, because we really are involved or in doing a little bit of everything. You're not so siloed. So I was working for a company that I adored called AirPO. It's a small little biotech company. We were about 25 people, and I was in charge of heading up the GI division, which a division for a company of 20 is two, right? So I was heading up the GI initiative, and we knew that we had a product that had a lot of promising, efficacy from the preclinical work. So I was bringing it forward, started the phase one study, which is not in healthy volunteers. Well, that wasn't healthy volunteers, but we were trying to get an early read to see if it had any efficacy in the colon. Um, Anyways, as we were developing this, as a small company, we didn't have enough money to take both of our products, through full development. So I was trying to find ways to expedite the enrollment, get this program going forward, because we really believed in this. So I remember I went to one of the bigger GI conferences. You're standing in there in a giant convention center with, 10,000 people, and I tried to understand, where can I go? What doctors have the patients? How could we expedite enrollment? And I kept hearing the same thing, well, you're probably going to get one patient per site, maybe every 2 months. So if you need to enroll a study with 600 people, you're probably going to have to go into other countries. You're going to have to open thousands of sites. And I was really frustrated by that. Frustrated because I knew we had a drug that could help people, and it just didn't seem right. So anyway, I stayed with that company for a while. We ended up licensing that drug out, and it was a great experience, and I adore them. But after we licensed that out, our other program didn't actually move forward, and the company closed. So I used that as an opportunity to start my own consulting firm. And what I originally tried to do is get smaller private practice doctors, community hospitals, bring more awareness about trials and get them involved. And that's, easier said than done because doctors' offices are very slow to change. And getting the word out, to get them involved has been a challenge. And then with COVID, it was even kind of more of a challenge. So, in the meantime, what I've done is quite a lot of consulting, a lot of, work around other trials and operational stuff. But that was the impetus to start the company because I feel like there's so many people that could benefit from being involved in trials, and not only patients, but medical practices.
What an exciting journey. Thank you for sharing that with us. So, you know what it's like to overcome challenges or to have fork in the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
And as we are talking to an audience of business owners, whether they're watching now or they're watching on the replay, what are some of your experiences that you've been through that you could share to help people in their journey?
I think it's probably a conversation that most people are having, the overused term now of pivoting, right? But as entrepreneurs, we know it very well. There's just no other way. The best laid plan is rarely the one that you're going to stay on. So, and it's challenging, right? I mean, I sort of said it was like dating. You gotta do a lot of matching to find a doctor. And for my area of research, it was difficult, very difficult, because I'd find doctors that said, "Yeah, I want to get involved in trials." And then I had to match them with a pharma company or a biotech that said, "Yeah, I'm willing to take a risk and put a trial at a new center." So that it's very hard. That's a tough road. It's a worthy road, and even if I get a few sites open, it's worth it to me. But I think as an entrepreneur, all we can do is just continue to evolve and just take it on the chin and keep going. Like, all right, so that didn't, I'll keep working on that. And then I have to find other aspects. And recently, what I've been doing a lot of is partnering with already well-established site networks, because I realized, like, look, my best area of expertise is doing the operational work, and maybe knocking on doors, doctors' offices isn't the best use of my time. So that's why I've been talking with other people that have good site networks, and just sort of more leveraging and working together. So to me, I think that's what's helped, partnering, and having this mentality of abundance, because that's what we have, really. There's hundreds of thousands of trials, more doctors than we could count. So I think the more that we work together and help each other and partner, that's kind of the way I've been able to survive the COVID land.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Jennifer, when we think about the fact that everyone in the world is aware of COVID and the pandemic, and we've all had to pivot, shift, etc.,
Yeah.
how does your work get impacted from a global perspective?
Well, clinical trials have been just shut down. They were shut down for 2020. It was a halt. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I think what the lesson is, I think there's pluses and minuses to this, because I think society and the whole world took from this, like, look what can happen. You guys got treatments for COVID, in a year and a half. Well, why can't you do that for cancer or, ALS or any of these other indications? And the message is, because we shut down the world. Like when the whole world pulled together to say we need to do something about COVID, that's all anybody was doing. That was the only trials anyone was doing. And that's what happened. But and that's why we were successful in getting some vaccines out here and learning so much so quickly. Uh but what that did to the rest of the industry is kind of shut us down. It took all of our development plans and pushed us back years. And we're still feeling that because, I mean, we're coming back to normal, right? COVID's starting to calm down, but it bumps up all the time. But it's changed our landscape of how we do research because we've learned that the term now that everybody's using is this decentralized clinical trials. Basically, it's finding a way to make things easier for patients so they don't have to go into the doctor's office for every single visit. So it's definitely helped us. I think it's done a lot for clinical research, this COVID world, in making it more understanding that our trials have to be more accessible to the patients and the doctors too.
Thank you, Jennifer. You brought up a lot of really good points, and something I'm just going to throw out there because throughout time, I've heard this from various people who are kind of naysayers against big pharma, is
Mhm.
that we have the ability to cure all of these diseases, but because pharma makes so much money, they don't want to do that. So, is there any validity to that based on your experience?
I can't even understand it. I have a keynote speech that I was been working on, and it's basically saying pharma is not the big bad wolf. Who's the bad guy? I think we all want a bad guy. It's easy to have one. I don't think there is. I've worked in pharma my whole life, and I was working on some rare diseases, a rare pediatric program in Pompeii. They made a movie about it, so a lot of people know this one, Extraordinary Measures. You know, I don't know anyone that doesn't want to cure people. I mean, people don't usually go into the pharmaceutical industry to not, and we're keeping secrets like that. Why would we, right? Um, I just don't believe it. I think although it's a business, right? It is a business. It's a big business, and it's not one person's fault. It costs $1 billion or upwards of $1 billion sometimes to get a drug to the market. So a drug company just can't focus on every single disease there is. It's impossible, right? And whose fault is that? It's not just pharma's fault. Like, if we go to doctors, it costs us a lot of money to get trials there. We have to deal with the patients, we have to deal with insurance. So there's definitely not one culprit, right? I mean, there never is in life, right?
Yeah, very good points. When I was in my corporate career, which I retired from in 2020, many of the programs that I sold meetings and events, employee recognition, but many of the programs were to pharmaceutical companies. And I was really lucky. I was privileged to be able to be at product launches and be there when the announcement came and the
Mhm.
executive got up and told the organization, this is approved and this is what we're going to be doing. And years and years of work went into it and
Yeah.
money, to your point, $1 billion or more. And a question that I have is that in many parts of the world outside of the United States,
Mhm.
drugs are approved and they haven't been approved here. So could you walk us through that process of how does it get to the United States? Is it in the United States first and then goes to Europe? What does that look like?
No, and that's changed more so too because there's been more harmonization with the EU and the US. And there's certain countries that are harder to get approved than the US. The FDA, the Canadian FDA, they call themselves the Canadian FDA, but sometimes, like when I was running this trial, the IBD trial that we're just thinking about, when we were starting the first study, I filed it with the FDA, the US FDA, and then we thought, okay, do we want to do the first study in the US or do we want to do it in Canada? And we decided to do it in Canada. We did it in Toronto, only because they had a great clinic there and it was easy to, we were impressed with the clinic. But the truth is, the Canadian FDA was a little bit tougher. So there's little differences between each country's regulatory board, but some of them are not they're not all easier, and there's a lot of standardization. Usually countries follow. The FDA could be the gold standard, but the EU is right up there. So it really varies, and I think that can be a misconception too. Usually, um, yeah, usually if there's something approved here, they're doing it in parallel, right? They're planning to launch in the US and launch in Europe around the same time. And actually the Chinese authorities, regulatory authorities, they're not easier either. It's tough to get a drug approved there. So they're all very different.
Well, thanks again for debunking myths and letting us know what the actual truth is. So, I want to walk us back a little bit. So, for someone who's been relatively healthy for their whole life and they're not on
Mhm.
medication, they've heard of clinical trials, but it goes in one ear and out the other. So, you have a drug that you want to get approved. You're going to do clinical trials. I think is it still four phases?
Well, it's 3. The 4th one is after you get FDA approval, they call that 4. It's like a post-marketing plan, but it's really 3. Once you do 3, you file with the FDA to get approval. Mhm.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So you decide you're going to do these trials. You are partnered with various sites. So you just mentioned in
Yep.
Canada. So you've got a site and now you need patients. So how does this recruitment process go? You mentioned it's very
Well,
regulated.
that's not as regulated as much, and that is the $1,000,000 question, and the biggest challenge that pharmas and biotech have is. So what we typically do is we kind of do some really basic formula. We say like just say for the GI study, we're like, okay, we need 800 patients, and we have X number of dollars, and the board told us we have to have this done in 2 years. So we kind of come up with a formula to say, well, it looks like the average recruitment rate might be. It's usually less than 1, so it'd be like 0.8 patients per site per month. Then we back kind of filter to figure out how many sites we need. We'll also look to say, okay, we know if you go to say, France or probably not France or different countries, they might have better recruitment rates, quicker recruitment rates. So then we figure out where to go. And you have to weigh all the options. If you're a small company, you probably don't have the regulatory support to do something in Europe. But anyway, you kind of figure that out. And then what we rely very, very heavily on is the doctor's offices. So that's a big challenge. And what the rule is to have these IRBs or institutional review boards. So every study is approved by an IRB. And the IRB's primary role is to protect patient safety. They don't care if you want to do a trial that doesn't make any sense and you're not going to get good data. Well, that's your buck. But um, they will make sure that you're protecting patient safety. So anything that is going to be patient facing, like the informed consents you see, or the ads that you hear on the news, on the radio, they have to approve those because you can't say something on there that's not true. So, so that's the $1,000,000 question. How do you get to the patients? Um, and the doctors have to find them. A big challenge that we have, and it's never been really figured out, is so if you pick a doctor, say, I think Dr. JACALYN and I, we were talking about the one main GI doctor at Penn. So if you pick him as your PI, he's your main PI, he can get referrals from lots of different doctors in the area. But ultimately, the patients are being seen under his medical practice, under his medical license, right? So we often try to find ways to get referrals so that if a doctor, if a hospital, not a hospital necessarily, a doctor like a few towns away has a patient that could be eligible for your trial, we always want them to refer over to the main PI. But that's a challenge because practices don't want to hand over their patients sometimes. They're afraid they won't come back. So that's what we often work on, figuring out ways to get the patients involved in the trials. And ultimately, because it's required, right, that the principal investigator, this doctor at Penn or whomever, it's under his or her license. So they are ultimately responsible. You know, we can't open up tons of little sites all around, because unless that doctor's okay with it and oversees it properly.
Such interesting information. I want to make it a little bit personal now and have you weigh in on it. So, I've been on the same medication that my primary at Penn, not doctor, the other doctor that we
Yeah.
spoke of, and he was involved in the clinical trial for the
Mhm.
drug that I've been on.
Mhm.
So over the years, he said to me, "Listen, there's all kinds of new medications that you could try," and so I have not tried any of them, and I am sick, let's say 6 months of every year,
Mhm.
but I've gotten used to living my life a certain way as opposed to putting myself out there to be in a trial or to go
Mhm.
on a different drug. And I know from an intellectual perspective, it sounds ridiculous,
No.
but I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I honestly feel like it's like you already said. You have to have the best doctor and you have to trust your doctor, right? I think that that's a problem now is that everyone's like googling every disease and they think that they could take their medical care under, their own hands and they can't. And that happens to me all the time too. People are like, "Hey Jen, look up this or this." I'm like, "I am not weighing in on your disease. I'm not a physician." But what I can do is I can go on clinicaltrials.gov and I can look up every study that's going on in your disease. And you should have the best doctor that you trust, right? And if you don't, then get a new doctor, right? Right. But it sounds like you have a good one. Um, but I hear you. I think sometimes we're just like, this is working. I don't want to change it. And that's valid. If I were you, I'd probably do the same. But another thing I wanted to mention that is very powerful is that we know that these medications are expensive, right? Especially these new biologics, and we also know that people's insurance isn't always that great, right? It's only getting worse. So sometimes these are options for people that have kind of subpar insurance. Like if you go to your doctor, like just say I'm running a program right now in ophthalmology, and it's for sort of a rare ophthalmology program and it causes corneal ulcers. There's a drug on the market for this, but it's very, very expensive. And, so some people might not be able to afford it. They can participate in a clinical trial and then they get their medication and they get their care paid for. So I think that that's an important thing for people to think about, especially nowadays when we're all strapped for money and insurance. Sometimes trials are an option. Another one story is my son who's 16. I have a picture of him on my website. He has really bad acne, and I went to the dermatologist. And if anyone has gotten derm products, you know how expensive they are. And I saw they had a sign about clinical trials, so I put my son on an acne trial. He got all his meds paid for for a year.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. So I have a comment and then I have a question. And thank you
Mm.
for sharing that. I have facial eczema, and
Yeah.
I was told by my dermatologist at Penn that no more prednisone. You got to
Mm.
go with this biologic. And of course, I went to Mr. and Mrs. Google and I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh. And then because of the clinical trials, and I guess it has to be in the public domain, patients were putting their experiences down with the
Mhm.
drug. I
Mhm.
lost my eyesight, this happened, that
Mhm.
happened, and in the meantime I've got a face full of active eczema. So
Yeah.
I really fought against it, and I just actually kind of went into seclusion and
Mm.
was just not feeling great about myself. But where I'm going with this is I decided to start on it. So I
Mhm.
started on it. It worked. It was like a miracle. And then I left my corporate job where I had the best insurance. And as a
Mhm.
business owner, all of a sudden I had to start looking at options. And I'm looking
Mhm.
at the price of insurance and I'm looking at the price of this drug,
Oh my god, yeah.
and the drug wasn't even covered on many of the programs unless they were thousands of dollars a month. And I thought, what about someone
Mhm.
who has never made a fortune? Like a person who is struggling to get by, how are they going to
Mhm.
afford this?
I know.
So the long and short of it is I don't have great insurance compared to what I used to have because
I
I
know.
had an employer who was paying for most of it. And this drug that I'm now I have used it once and then I changed my diet and it hasn't come back. Excuse me, but it's still cost prohibitive. And thank goodness the
I know.
drug company has a loyalty program so that you can get the drug for a year.
Yes. That is so important, and I can tell you many stories about that too. I have my own personal one my son, before he went on that trial and I got on the acne medicine and it was so expensive, another time, oh, he has acne, but he also has bad, bad, bad eczema, just like you, very bad, and he had it from birth. So I got probably a similar drug that you tried to get on, and I was just like, "Oh my god," it was probably like $150 for a little tube, right? Um, and because I know the industry, I said that to the doctor, "Come on, is there something else? Just the generic." And he was like, "Yeah, okay." So I ended up getting the generic and it worked just as good. Now, I'm not always saying the generic is just as good. It's not. If you have cancer or you have something else and you really need the right drug, you need the right drug. But sometimes, like if you have a headache or you can take the generic and you can save $50 or $75. I'm with you. And I think what you said a minute ago that's even more important that people don't know is that loyalty thing. It's either a loyalty plan or it's a patient assistance plan. There's also entire advocacy groups. I just recently found a new one that I didn't know about. You can apply on there and they'll help pay for your medications, all different types of medications. People don't know that these things are available. Um, so I think it's true. Like some drugs are cost prohibitive, and maybe you don't need that drug, right? Maybe you can take an alternative drug. But if you really do really need it, then there's ways to afford it. But you have to be smart and you have to take the time to navigate it. And look, Dr. Jacqueline, you and I can figure that out. But what about like elderly people or they can't, and it's really sad. This truly is.
Such a valid point you just made. It is not for the faint-hearted. What I went through to
No.
get that drug, and by the way, the drug that I got for my face is you inject it every 2 weeks.
Oh gosh, it must be a
So
fortune.
yes, it's a fortune. And I said this actually to my sister. I said, what I had to go through to get the drug approved between the
Yes.
insurance company, the pre-authorization from the doctor, dealing with the drug company directly, then talking to the nurses program they have there. That's, you could have just, it's like calling the cable company and being like
Mhm.
times 10.
I
so
know.
so here's my question for you that I have for the clinical trials. And this again could be another myth, but isn't it true that not everyone gets the actual drug and that they're placebos and you might think that you're getting it, but you're actually not?
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because that's the biggie. That's the big, big biggie. Um, that is really not true if you have a serious disease because it's unethical. And I think most people know the more famous one would be like the Tuskegee trials. Right? Is that ringing a bell? I mean, I can't see you, but,
Yeah.
probably most people have heard of the Tuskegee trials. If you haven't, you should read it. It's a horrible story. It was, trials that went on, um, with, African American men. I think they were former Tuskegee airmen, and it started in the 40s. It went on into the 70s, and, it went on long after they knew that penicillin, was a treatment for syphilis, so these guys were left untreated. It's a terrible tragedy, and it really, it just eroded any confidence I think many people have in clinical trials. Anyway, as the outcome of that, that's why we got with the Belmont report and the IRBs, and these trials are much more controlled, right? And you could never, if you had a disease that was going to kill you or hurt you, they would never approve getting nothing. Like if you have cancer, and you're going to enroll in a clinical trial, yes, it has to be randomized because we have to know that it worked better or at least as good as the standard of care. But you would never get placebo. You typically what you would get is they'd be randomized into two arms. One arm would be the standard of care, the stuff that you would get no matter what. And the other arm would be the study drug. And if it's at that point, which would be phase 3 likely, um, we'd already know enough data to think to say that there's evidence that this is going to work or, help you. And the other thing that the IRBs have is, safety review boards. And typically we don't always have a safety review board, but typically an IRB might say, "You better get a safety review board if there's any question." And that would be an unblinded group of doctors, that would look at the data. at snapshots to say, how is it looking? If at any point it looked like the people that were on study drug were not faring as well as the others, they would stop it. Um, so the placebo wouldn't be in a situation like that. And another thing that is typically written into a protocol is a crossover. So, like the study I'm working on right now in eye disease, they're either going to get the standard of care or our drug. Um, Actually, for this study, they're not getting standard of their care. They are going to either get placebo or they're going to get our drug. If the people that are getting placebo are not responding well and they're progressing, they almost always have the option to cross over and get study drug. So, I think that's a pretty bad myth that, it's not so true. And you always have the option to pull out and say, this isn't working or I don't feel good. So,
Thank you
but
for
yeah, those
clearing that.
kids in college are probably getting, yes, those kids in college that are sitting in there, getting paid, they're getting placebo. Yeah. But they don't have diseases.
Thank you for clarifying that. Now, what about a couple of terms? Blind study, double blind study. What does that mean?
Well, blinded means obviously what you would expect. And ironically, in ophthalmology studies, we never call them blinded, we call them masked. But isn't that funny? It's the same thing, though. It means that nobody knows who got what. So just so people realize, your doctor, your nurses, they don't know. They will not know if you're getting drug or not. But if you were to look like on ClinicalTrials.gov and you were going to consider a trial, if it's called open label, that means you know what you're going to get. So that's an interesting point, Dr. JACALYN. I'm glad you brought it up. If somebody really had a huge fear about this, you would make sure that you're on an open label trial. You'll know exactly what you're getting. And everybody knows what you're getting. When you maybe you have a bottle of pills that you take home or it's an injection, it'll say what you know what you're getting. But if it's double blinded, it means you don't know as the patient, your doctor doesn't know, your nurses don't know. Me as a pharma person, I definitely don't know. So we run the whole study, and then once it's over.
Wow, Jennifer just disappeared. So we're talking about clinical trials and myths and what we've heard in the past about what actually happens during a clinical trial. We've learned that there are actually 3 phases of the clinical trial, and then the 4th is when the marketing starts to take place and the announcements take place that the FDA has approved the drug. So I've got some more questions for Jennifer. I see she's backstage trying to connect. This is a great time to take a break and hear from some of our sponsors. The first sponsorship that I just love sharing this is it's just wonderful about closing our eyes. And we've had several guests on recently that talked about the importance of just closing our eyes and taking a moment. So let's take a moment and then we'll be back. Thank you.
Take a moment.
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 So I've had the privilege of photographing some incredible people over the years, and during each shoot I've asked the subject to close their eyes and take themselves to a peaceful place just for a few seconds. I've found that this really helps to refresh the energy between the camera and the subject. They had an energy that was quite special and quite different from the rest of the shoot. The collection grew, and now it feels the right time to use it for something good. I think it'd be amazing if we could help to raise awareness and involve people in the discussion about mental health. So what we're asking to do is for everyone to upload their own self-portraits. All of these portraits will become part of a massive artwork. I'm really excited to see this project go from hundreds of pictures to thousands of pictures. Essentially, an ever-evolving artwork that says we're all in this together.
Close your eyes and take a moment.
The overnight gives me a sense of community.
The overnight starts conversations with people.
The overnight walk shows you that you're not alone.
Loss due to suicide is very isolating. When I lost my sister, it was really hard to talk to other people about it. So it's really important to find AFSP and to find this walk.
I feel that I'm in a community that is one place where I don't have to explain myself.
Grief is a journey, and remembering my brother is always going to be part of my life, and this is helping immensely.
Talking about my experience allows me the opportunity to help any other survivor. I'm here to talk, and I'm also here to listen.
The 16 miles goes faster than you think, and there are people around you the whole time to support you.
You walk all night, and it gets really tough, it gets really dark, but you hear the cheers, you kind of look ahead and you see that light. It symbolizes just keep struggling, there is a light, you are going to finish.
Crossing the finish line feels unreal.
It's just such a gratifying feeling and such a feeling of hope and strength.
There's really no words for it. It's unspeakable joy.
To walk back through the arch and see the luminaria lighting up the night, it's overwhelming. I find fundraising to be easy.
I had a modest goal set for myself, but when I started doing it, I realized I could raise that goal and achieve more than I thought possible.
The money that we raise goes to research, advocacy, and funding programs so that we can prevent suicide and save lives.
The best part of the overnight, the people you meet.
We're all carrying a heavy load, but I can help you carry yours, you can help me carry mine, and then we can all get through this together.
I'm walking for my brother.
I'm walking for myself.
I am walking for all suicide survivors.
Join us.
Walk with us.
You are not alone.
One night.
One goal.
Stop suicide. No matter how dark it seems, there is hope. Walk with us.
Walk with us.
Definitely come. It's a life-changing, life-saving experience.
Register today.
Register today at theovernight.org.
really want people to think about is considering trials, if you haven't gotten that through, as more of a patient, as a healthcare option, right? Because the truth is, we know the outcomes on people that participate trials are better than people that don't. Even if you already see your doctor regularly, we know what's happening now. Doctors are super busy. They're in and out, in and out, in and out. When you're in a trial, you do get a lot of good care. You get dedicated time. You get more labs, more physicals, more assessments. So sometimes they're not only just a last minute, a last option. They're the best option, to get better care. So, and actually many years ago, I was running a hypertension study, and I was surprised when I learned. We went up to Detroit. We were working with the Henry Ford Medical Center, and I was talking with an ER doctor up there, and his enrollment rates were incredible. So I was like, I don't understand what's going on here in Detroit. Because you know what? A lot of these people don't have good medical care. So this is where they come once a year. They get their physical, they get their labs, they participate in a trial. So I think that's really important, and not because we're taking advantage of people that don't have good insurance, but because we're helping them to get better care. And that's what I think is an important message, and and people
Huge.
think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge because you're giving people hope that regardless of what your income is, there are
Yes.
opportunities, there are options. Something I just wanted to throw out there because I thought this was really fascinating. I share with you about the medication I've been taking for my ulcerative colitis since 1991. Well, when I worked in corporate, it was $10 a month.
Yeah.
And that was for the actual brand, not the generic. And I never thought twice about it.
Yeah.
Then when I went out on my own, it was going to be $350 a month. And I thought, what? Like, it's the same medicine. There's like no difference. It's like, did they put something in there like Cracker Jack's box? There's a ringer. No, there's nothing different. So depending on what your insurance is, it really does make a difference about whether or not you can afford what you need. And this is wonderful to let our audience know about this.
Well, see that's an area that I can't really speak to. And honestly, I probably feel the same as you and your audience. What's this disparity with the numbers and the pricing? That to me, I hate to say it, maybe that's where the big bad wolf is. Maybe once it goes out to marketing and sales, I don't know, like how they come up with that. Yeah, I'm with you. There seems to be a lot of just unusual stuff. Like, why is it the way it is? I don't know. Um, and it's awful, and I wish it would get better, but
Now, a question I have from a global perspective: when there's socialized medicine in a country, how does that impact the pharmaceuticals? Are they all I don't know how that works. Is it included with whatever you pay?
I think for those type of things, they end up seeing what's on the formulary, right? I've heard that before with people in Canada that say sometimes you think it's better here, it's not. We're only offered certain medications. If you want these, you have to pay for it. You're offered these doctors. If you want a specialist, you're still going to pay for it. So I think that I hear that a lot about like Canadian medicine and stuff. Like, yeah, we specialize medicine, but we come to the US to go to New York or to, Philadelphia to get to these top tier doctors. And that's something people need to remember. Like everyone thinks, oh, these other, we still are the United States. We still have cutting edge medicine. It's happening here. It is happening here for a reason. So, we still have the best access to the greatest doctors and, the cutting edge treatments.
I'm so glad you said that. And I'm from Philly originally, Philadelphia, for those outside the United States. And what I found so interesting, Jennifer, is in interviewing people on this platform, we've had people come and, one guy had a heart transplant, all different scenarios, and they went to Philadelphia. They went to Penn because the level of research and development and physicians there, it's amazing.
Yeah, they're at Penn, they're at New York. If you go to Memorial Sloan, if you have cancer, my aunt had cancer, she was treated there. I remember there was like a Saudi prince there once, and they had to like close off one of the wings. Like they're coming here for a reason. We do cutting edge work here. So,
and it's interesting, which is a whole other topic and other show, but I'm just going to mention it. A number of people who have shared with me that they've gone outside the United States for cosmetic surgery.
Yeah, right. And how do they feel when they come back is the question.
I got a facelift for $300. Oh, good. Good for you.
I hope they didn't get an infection while they were there. That's all.
I know. So let's turn to talk about what you do and your offerings and how we can support you and your work.
Yeah. So, I've been doing a lot of different aspects. Again, obviously right now, the main goal here was just to kind of bring awareness. One of the things I would say to patients, to anybody that works for medical practice, think about trials. Honestly, think about them. And if you have, and how can you think about it? You could talk to your doctor to say, hey doc, or, are you doing any trials here? Or why not? Often when I knock on the door of my doctors in Philadelphia and I say, you want to get involved in the trial, they're usually like, I don't have time for that. They don't understand that it's an offering the patients could use. It could help them. So I would say as a patient, be proactive and see, because we need you. We're desperate to get patients in trials. And it is really win-win. You get you get a treatment option. It helps the doctors. It helps the pharmas. For medical people, if you're at work for an office, think about it. Think about bringing it up to to whoever the doctor or whoever owns the practice to say, should we want to talk about adding trials to our practice? Why not? And then reach out to me, or definitely reach out to me. I could put you in the right spot. We could talk about it. And get you involved in trials. It's not that hard. People sometimes think it's this big burden to get involved. There's thousands of trials. Some of them, yes, if it's a cancer study or it's a rare disease, it might not work. But if it's like a dermatology, we're desperate to find good dermatology centers, desperate to find practices that want to get involved in them. And it's not that hard to get involved. Usually you need a locked cabinet. You might need another locked area to keep the medical records. If it's a drug that needs to be refrigerated, so be it. And the truth is that drug companies will pay for that. They will buy a doctor's office a fridge if they need. If they had a good practice that was going to help them, they will do what they need to get you ready. And I have friends that will train you too. So that's an action item I would say. Reach out to us if you want to hear more about trials. Not only for me, but my partners. I have friends that do compliance work, and we'd love to talk to you and get you more involved in it. And that would be, I think, the main message for your audience. I mean, obviously, if anyone is looking for anyone with more smaller biotech companies that are looking for clinical consultants, call me, please. I'm always eager to see if I can pick up more work. But primarily, I think the message is getting us to small community practices. The more, the better.
Outstanding. And Jennifer, for people who cannot read the banner or they're listening on the radio, what's the best way to reach you, and who would you like to contact you?
You can, my email, it's the name of my company is Corlexia. It's CORLEXIA.com. So you can click into my website, and then my email information is on there. Or you can always email me directly, and that's under my name. J Bonfrisco, BONFRISCO @Corlexia, CORLEXIA.com. So you can email me. You can go on LinkedIn. I do a lot on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're a medical practice, look me up there. It's just under my name. And yeah, let's just talk. I could talk clinical trials all day.
This has been very interesting. So thank you so much. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm interested in learning more. And I'm also excited to see what we can do for Take Steps, which is...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. In fact, while you're here, I'm just going to run our sponsorship for Take Steps. Let's just take a look, and then we'll have a little chat if I can find it.
Yep, I have it on calendar. I'm going to be there with my kids, and we're going to tour the locker rooms, right?
We've got to get $5,000 raised. So we've got a little bit of work to do that. But let's just take a look. So for folks who aren't aware of what we're talking about, the Crohn's Colitis Foundation, specifically the Philadelphia, Delaware chapter, has a walk, just like there are other walks all over the country. And this has been the #1 walk, and we want to go for the #1 walk again. I'm on the board. I'm the marketing and advocacy chair. I run the support group and have a team for this event, which is my team is Dr. J's Colitis Crew. And we have a number of people from USA Global TV who are going to be flying in or driving in, and we're going to be broadcasting together. So let's take a look. The event takes place where the Philadelphia Eagles football team actually plays. It's called Lincoln Financial Field, also known as the Link. And we'll take a look, and then Jennifer and I will have a chat. So there it is.
That's beautiful.
Yes, they did a great job. And in the past, the event has been at Citizens Bank Park, which is where the Phillies baseball team plays. So we will actually be meeting. There is a general session, so to speak, where we're all in our seats. There's a lot of fun and ooh ha ha, and top teams get to have their name on the big board. And then we will have our booth, USA Global TV, and we'll have our green screen. And I believe we're going to have some toilet seats that people can throw the football through. And we'll just be interviewing people as they walk by. So it should be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in joining us, you can go over to my Facebook page, which is JACALYN KERBECK, and you can sign up there to join our team for Take Steps. Jennifer, anything you want to add about the Crohn's Colitis Foundation or anything else?
I love everything about them. I've been a sponsor there for 2 years. Last year, this year I did not sponsor, but I'm going to be there with everybody. It is a remarkable association. And they do so much, not only, for the patients. They have a whole division that's very focused on clinical trials. A lot of the money that they raise, they put towards research, supporting private practice doctors. They're really one of the special ones. And it's a really fun event. I remember last year I went with my kids. I have 3 young kids. Well, not so young. One's 16 now. The others are 13. And there was a guy driving through. We had a drive-through Take Steps last year because of COVID. And he had one of those Teslas that farts the whole time, the little button you push. He just farted his way through the whole event. So it's just a lot of fun, people. Just like, it's not that heavy, and now we make light of it and we have a good time. So yeah, please, it's fun. It's a fun place.
Yeah, in 2019, which was the last time I was there in person because of COVID, my team had I call them poop hats. So we all had poop hats, and I had a big American flag. My mom was carrying a toilet paper holder. So it was definitely a lot of fun. So we are tasked with raising $5,000 so that we can we get to run through the tunnel, and then we get to walk around the field. But to go through the locker room, we have to raise $5,000. And my big event has always been Spin for Cures. And I think last year I raised, I don't know if it was 13,000 or I don't know, it was a lot. Yeah. So I'm asking all of our friends out there, if you know someone who has Crohn's or colitis, IBD, you have it, please join us, whether you can be there or not. We're happy to wear your company sponsorship if you donate $100. And if you can be there in person, that's great. So just, again, go over to my personal page. I'll put it in the comments on Facebook, JACALYN KERBECK. Just look for Take Steps and join, donate. So.
Thank you. Good. I'm so glad to be with you on that.
I am too. All right, Jennifer, we're going to close out for now, and I'll be in touch with you and love to have you back on the platform or on any of our shows that we have. You have a very interesting topic that I think we need to keep getting the word out.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye. Thank you again to all of you who are watching our shows or listening to our shows, who are letting other people know about our shows. You see this content that we just had today. Every show is unique, and I am continuously learning things. And it's fascinating to me that there are so many topics we can talk about, and they're all good news related. It's all about giving education as well as entertainment. So I'm going to close out with a few last announcements. And then our next show is Talking Heads. That's coming up at 4:30 Eastern Time, which is 9:30 British Summer Time. And that's with Jean Keegan Daly, followed immediately by Talking Heads at 5 p.m. Eastern or 10 p.m. British Summer Time. And that is Mariska Dupree's show. Okay, so let me just go through the announcements quickly. We are coming very quickly up to May the 1st. It's hard to believe. And we have a reunion show. We have a few openings left for people who want to promote their work. This is not an interview show. This is 6 hours of live streaming, and you get 15 minutes to promote whatever it is that you have to promote. Maybe it's some process you created. Maybe it's a book, it's a poem, it's your business, it's an event. So do go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com, book your session. Okay, we also have the power of listening. For those of you who are not aware, in addition to me running this platform. I also am a certified life and career coach, a certified meditation coach, and a certified yoga instructor. And I teach people how to listen at an elevated level. Our next listening course, where you will get certified and then you get invited to be on our TV and radio show, The Listening Mentor. You also get your picture and bio up on my personal website, drjacalyn.com. The next opportunity to join us is May the 10th, and I'll put the information into the comments. And finally, I just want to leave you with this. We have some new shows coming up. We have our Christianity show, which will be starting very shortly. We have a new show, which is in its third week, What's Trending with Kathy Fulton. Each and every week, we talk about new and exciting topics. We also have Leadership of the Heart, and I think we're in our 4th episode of that. It's all about heart-centric leadership. And then the last one I really want to talk about and then go out from there is the Talking Heads panel. So you're aware that we have experts on our team. They're called Talking Heads. And so once a month, we are having them meet as a panel, and they get the topic of discussion literally right before the show. And as a matter of fact, for the one we did in April, I gave them 3 topics backstage, and they all picked one topic, which was about homeschooling. And right before I hit the live button, I said, no, we're going to talk about banning plastic, pro or con. So it ended up being a great discussion because they had never been on the screen together and never met each other for the most part, and now had to talk about something really important, like a topic like plastic banning. Okay, and finally, we have 2 other new shows that are coming that are both panel-based shows. The first one is a woman's prerogative, and that is starting May the 4th, which is a Wednesday, and it's a show by women, for women, about women. And very soon I'll be posting an announcement with the headshots of the panel. And on the other side for the men, one of our team members, a dear colleague, his name is Roland Friedel. He is hosting and moderating a men's show called Men Gone Wild, Bonfires. I think they're called something Bonfires. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact name, but he's created. It's really fantastic. It's authentic conversations for men, by men, about men. That also starts May the 4th. So 3 key dates: May the 1st, reunion show; May the 4th for Woman's Prerogative and Men Gone Wild; and May the 10th for the Power of Listening. And I'm sorry, there's one more thing, but wait, there's more. My new book is coming out. Here it is. And this is a collaboration with some other authors. 11 other authors and myself have each written a chapter. My book coach, Red O'Laughlin, and I have gone and taken all of the interview content. I conducted interviews with each of these authors. We did it via Zoom, had what they had to share transcribed into words, and then Red and I worked to put the words into third person and send it back to the authors so they could review it. And now we're compiling everything with their pictures, their bios, the testimonials, all the things that take place to put together a good book. So that is going to be a live book launch. And guess when it is? It's May the 4th. Everything's May the 4th, in addition to all the shows we already have. So that's all I have for you right now. Thank you for being here. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel now or on the replay, please click subscribe. We would love to have you as part of our family. Thanks again. Take care.